Lena lived in a forgotten village tucked between dry hills and narrow dirt paths. Her family was poor, not just poor in money, but in chances, in hope, and in rest. Every day was a battle for survival, and it was her father, Baba Kadir, who bore the most visible scars of that battle. He spent long hours in the market, fixing broken carts and carrying heavy sacks for pennies. Her mother, Mina, sat under the sun selling old vegetables, wilted, bruised, and barely sellable. Haris, her elder brother, walked village to village looking for work, but no one trusted a boy with nothing in his hands. People whispered behind their backs. That family, didn't they sleep in the streets once? They had. There was a time when they had no roof, no food, and nowhere to hide when it rained. They had been evicted from their house because they couldn't pay rent. For 3 months, they lived in an abandoned cattle shed, the walls cracked and the air thick with the smell of old hay and fear. But despite all the pain, her parents never gave up on one thing: education. Money comes and goes, Baba Kadir would always say, but no one can steal knowledge from your mind. Even when they had no bread, no shoes, and wore the same torn clothes for years, they made sure that Lena and Haris went to school. Lena was bright. She read her books under candlelight and memorized poems, even when her stomach growled. She refused to let poverty chain her future. Then one day, a miracle came in the form of a white envelope, a scholarship letter offering Lena a place at the city university. Her tears soaked the page as she read it over and over. It was her only chance, the only key that could unlock the prison of her life. With a small bag and a big heart, she left the village. City life was tough, but Lena endured. 4 years passed in hunger, struggle, and silent victories. She graduated with top honors and found work as a cashier in a small company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid just enough to send money home and help her family buy rice without borrowing. She thought things would change now, that perhaps hope had finally arrived. But even as she tried to move forward, her past kept pulling her back. She dreamed of love, of a man who would hold her hand and whisper, "I choose you." But every time someone came close, they asked, "Where are you from?" And when she answered, the smiles faded. The judgment returned. "No one wants to marry a girl who once slept on a floor," she whispered to herself. Her brother Haris faced the same rejection. Every door closed as soon as people heard their story. And that pain, it didn't just hurt, it humiliated. Lena looked at the ceiling one night, a flickering lantern casting shadows across the wall. She had escaped the village, but not the label. Was this how life would always be? A debt paid in dreams. It was just another quiet evening in the village. The sun had dipped behind the hills, casting long golden shadows over their tiny home. The smell of boiling lentils filled the air. Haris sat outside sharpening an old knife, and Baba Kadir had just returned from the market. His shoulders slouched from another day of hard labor. Lena had returned home for a short visit, hoping to see her family and breathe in the soil that raised her. She didn't expect anything unusual, until her mother, Mina, walked in with a brown envelope in her trembling hands. "Lena," she said softly, her voice quivering, "come inside. Your father and I need to speak with you." Lena followed her, a knot already forming in her stomach. She sat at the wooden table, the same one they had eaten from since she was a child, scarred and faded but still standing. Baba Kadir placed the envelope in front of her like it held fate itself. Lena blinked. "What is it?" Her father cleared his throat. "Someone has asked for your hand in marriage." The air turned still. Mina added gently, "His name is Mr. Tsayan. He's wealthy, very wealthy. He owns land, farms and businesses in the city. Lena's heart beat faster. But who is he? You might have heard the name before, Baba Kadir replied. He's from this village originally. Left many years ago. Now he wants to come back to marry you. Lena stared at the envelope. Her hands were cold. She opened the letter slowly, each word sinking like stones into her chest. I am 60 years old. I am a man of means. I will care for your daughter and your family. This marriage will bring comfort and security to her and her loved ones. Her breath hitched. 60. She was 23. Mina touched her hand. We know it's sudden, but Lena, he promises to take care of us, all of us. Just then a knock at the door made everyone freeze. Haris opened it. 3 men stood outside. 2 carried sacks of maize, rice and flour. The third held a basket of vegetables and bottles of oil. Who sent this? Baba Kadir asked, voice low. The tallest man smiled. Mr. Sion, he says this is a small gift. There will be more once he visits your daughter. They left the goods and walked away. Lena stared at the food, more than they had seen in months. Her mother wept silently. Her father whispered, this man can change our lives, Lena. That night, Lena didn't sleep. She sat near the dying lantern flame, the letter on her lap, her heart in pieces. This wasn't the life she wanted. She had dreamed of love, of laughter, of a man whose hand felt like home, not someone nearly triple her age. But then, she remembered, while cleaning a drawer last week, she'd found a medical report tucked under old papers. Her father's name was on it. He was sick, seriously sick, surgery was needed, and the cost was a mountain they could never climb. He had said nothing. They didn't want to worry her, but now she knew, and now she had a choice, protect her dreams or save her family. She whispered into the night, her voice shaking, God, what do I do? She knew the answer, but her heart, it shattered. 3 days passed. Lena barely spoke. She moved around the house like a ghost, cooking, cleaning, smiling at her mother, helping Haris fix the broken fence. But inside, she was drowning. Every time she looked at her father's tired eyes, her mother's quiet hands, and Haris's fading hope, a part of her cracked. The letter stayed folded under her pillow. At night, she would unfold it, read it again, and cry quietly into the cloth she kept beneath her blanket. She wanted to say no. She wanted to scream that this wasn't love. But poverty didn't give choices, it gave ultimatums. That evening, after dinner, Baba Kadir and Mina sat silently at the table. Haris stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching his sister with worry. Lena entered the room slowly. Her hair was tied back, her face pale, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. The silence wrapped around her like a noose. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, if this is what I must do to save our family, then I will do it. Her mother broke into tears. Her father looked down and closed his eyes. Thank you, my daughter, he said softly, pain buried in his words. Haris turned his face away. His fists clenched. He couldn't look at her. Lena walked back to her room and sat down beside the flickering lantern. Her breath came in slow, careful waves. She stared at her reflection in the small, cracked mirror on the wall. You are doing this for them, she whispered. Be strong. The next day, Mina helped her choose her dress. It was an old blue gown, worn too many times, but it was the best they had. They washed it, pressed it carefully, and laid it on the bed. Her mother braided her hair, adding little white beads to the ends. It wasn't fancy, but it was something. Later that afternoon they heard it. The deep rumble of tires against dry village dust. A black car appeared at the end of the road, shiny, long, and out of place. It came to a slow stop in front of their small home. Lena's heart pounded. Her palms were wet. She sat quietly on a wooden stool, her dress straightened, her eyes fixed on the floor. The door opened. A man stepped out. He was exactly as she imagined, grey-haired, wrinkled, slightly hunched. He walked with a slow, measured pace, a calmness in his expression. His suit was sharp, his shoes spotless, and in his eyes something unexpected, warmth. He greeted her parents first, shaking Baba Kadir's hand with respectful grace. Then he turned to Lena. "So, you are Lena," he said, his voice deep but gentle. She looked up briefly, then nodded. He smiled kindly. "I've heard much about you. A bright, strong woman." Lena didn't speak. Her mouth was dry. Her heart pounded. He gestured to a bench outside. "May I sit with you?" She nodded. Together they sat on the old wooden bench under the neem tree. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. Then slowly he began to talk. Not about the wedding, not about money, but about her. Her dreams, her family, her strength. And when she spoke, he listened, carefully, without interrupting, without judging. "I admire your courage," he said. "You remind me of someone I once knew." She turned to him. "Who?" He smiled faintly. "My mother." For the first time Lena smiled, just a little. She still didn't know what to think. He was old, too old, but in that moment he didn't feel dangerous or cruel, just kind. As they walked back inside, the sun dipped below the hills. The village air was still, and Lena, for the first time in days, felt the weight on her chest ease, if only just a little. The days that followed moved faster than Lena could process. The village buzzed with whispers, some kind, others sharp like blades. A young girl marrying a man old enough to be her father, some said with pity. "She's doing it for money," others murmured. Lena said nothing. She didn't explain. She didn't defend. She had already made peace with her decision. Her mother, Mina, and a few women from the village helped her prepare for the wedding. They stitched tiny white pearls onto her plain dress, added wild flowers to her braid, and rubbed natural oils on her skin to give her a glow. "You look like a queen," her mother whispered, her voice trembling. But Lena didn't feel like a queen. She didn't feel anything at all. The morning of the wedding, she stood in front of the cracked mirror in her childhood room. The small space looked the same, bare walls, faded curtains, the scent of wood smoke lingering in the air. She stared at herself. Her white dress clung neatly to her frame. Her veil rested gently on her head, but behind the softness of her appearance was a storm she couldn't quiet. Her hands trembled as she reached up to adjust the veil. Just then Mina entered, holding a cup of warm milk. "My child," she said softly, placing a hand on Lena's shoulder. "This is your life now. Be strong, be kind, be the good woman I know you are." Lena didn't speak. She simply nodded. Her eyes burned, but she didn't let the tears fall. Outside, people had gathered. The wedding was simple, no fancy hall, no bright lights. But in its simplicity, there was something beautiful. Villagers came dressed in their best. Plates of rice and bread sat on cloth-covered tables. Children played near the tree, where the couple would stand. Mr. Zion arrived, dressed in a clean, well-tailored black suit. His silver hair was neatly combed, and though his face carried the marks of age, his smile was warm, patient, respectful. He stood at the front as Lena stepped out of the house, her father by her side. The murmurs of the crowd faded as she walked past. Each step felt heavy, each breath a battle. Her father stopped beside Mr. Zion, kissed her forehead, then stepped away. Lena stood there, hands trembling, heart racing. "Do you, Lena, take Mr. Zion as your husband?" the elder officiant asked. The world slowed. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I do." The crowd clapped. Rice was tossed in the air. Children laughed. Women ululated in celebration. But Lena felt none of it. Her hands were cold in Mr. Zion's as he held them gently. She looked up into his face, searching for cruelty, for entitlement, for anything that would justify her fear. But she saw none, only kindness. Maybe this wouldn't be as bad as she imagined. Maybe she could learn to be okay. The sun was setting when they left the village in his black car. Hari stood by the gate, waving slowly. Her mother's eyes were full. Her father stood silent, his hand raised in farewell. The car rolled down the dusty road, away from everything Lena had ever known. Beside her, Mr. Zion sat quietly, hands folded on his lap. He didn't speak much. He didn't touch her. He just let her be. And as the car entered the city, and the lights grew brighter, Lena's heart grew heavier. Her wedding was over. Her new life had begun. And she had no idea what waited behind the doors of her new home. The car rolled to a smooth stop in front of towering black gates. Lena's breath caught as they creaked open, revealing a world unlike anything she'd ever seen. Beyond the gate stood a mansion. Not a house, not even a villa, a full-blown palace. Tall pillars lined the entrance, white marble steps gleamed in the dusk light, and a water fountain danced in the center of a perfectly trimmed garden. Servants in black uniforms stood waiting near the door, like statues brought to life. Lena's hands gripped the edge of her seat. Mr. Zion turned to her, offering a small smile. "This is your home now." She nodded quietly, unable to speak. As they stepped inside, the cool air of luxury brushed against her skin. Chandeliers sparkled like stars above her. Every corner smelled of fresh roses and polished wood. Her feet sank into soft velvet carpets as they walked across a wide hallway, portraits and golden frames lining the walls. She had never seen such comfort, but instead of awe, her chest tightened with discomfort. Everything was too big, too shiny, too far from the tiny home where her mother made tea in clay cups, and her brother laughed while peeling mangoes. This felt cold, empty, like a museum where she didn't belong. Mr. Zion led her to a room, huge and elegant. A bed large enough for 5, white curtains that fluttered with the wind, and a golden mirror that nearly touched the ceiling. "This will be your room," he said gently. "I hope you'll find peace here." Lena only nodded again. "I'll freshen up," he added, walking toward the bathroom. "You can rest." She watched him disappear behind the door. Then she turned back to the mirror. She stepped closer. What she saw startled her. Her reflection looked like a stranger, dressed in silk, hair done perfectly, lips gently tinted with soft pink. But her eyes were not happy. She sat on the edge of the bed, legs dangling like a child's. The silence of the room pressed against her. Her heart raced, not from excitement, but from fear. She was alone, married, and tonight she was expected to sleep beside a man nearly 40 years older. The sound of water running in the bathroom only made it worse. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. The water never stopped. She sat up, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Why was it taking so long? She walked slowly toward the door, hesitant. What if something was wrong? She raised her hand to knock, but froze. Before she could move, the door creaked open. Steam rolled out, and through it stepped A young man, Lena gasped. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his skin smooth, his hair wet, his face sharp, handsome, nothing like the wrinkled man she had married. She stumbled back. Who are you?" The man raised his hand slowly, as if to calm her. "Lena," he said gently. Her breath stopped. That voice, it was Mr. Zion's voice. But how? She shook her head violently. "No, this is some trick." "It's me," he said softly. "I'm Zion." Lena's knees weakened. Her mind spun. This can't be. This isn't real. The man stepped closer, and the truth, whatever it was about to shatter her world. Lena's back hit the wall. Her breath came in shallow, panicked bursts. The man standing before her wasn't just a stranger. He was the complete opposite of the husband she had married. "You're not Mr. Zion," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Where is he?" The man stepped back, giving her space. His towel clung to his waist, water dripping from his hair. His eyes, though younger, held the same calm intensity. "I am Zion," he said again. "I've always been." "No," she gasped, shaking her head. "That's impossible. Mr. Zion is old. He has grey hair, wrinkles. He walks slow." He nodded, lips pressed tightly. "That was makeup. A disguise." Lena's hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. Why would you lie?" Zion sat on the edge of the couch, keeping his distance. "Because I needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" she snapped, her voice rising. "That I'd marry a rich old man for your money." He didn't flinch. "Yes." The word hit her like a slap. Lena stood frozen. Her legs shook. Her thoughts spiraled. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. He continued quietly. "I've been wealthy most of my life, Lena. But I've seen how money blinds people, how it turns hearts into contracts. I didn't want a wife who loved my wealth. I wanted someone who could love beyond appearances." She stared at him, her fists clenched. "My grandfather," he said, his voice softer now, "used to say, 'A good woman will feed a poor man, not knowing he's a king.'" Zion looked up at her. "I heard your story, how you helped your family, how you worked through hunger, through rejection, how you still smiled. I had to know if it was real." Lena backed away slowly. "So this was a test, in a way." "Yes." She turned toward the window, her back to him. Her chest ached. Her world had just shifted on its axis. "I never wanted to trick you, Lena," he added. "I just wanted to see the truth." She turned around slowly, tears streaking her face. "You made me believe I was marrying a man 3 times my age. You made me give up my dreams, sacrifice my heart. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" Zion's eyes dropped to the floor. "I do now, and I hate myself for it." Silence settled between them, thick and heavy. Then Lena whispered, "What if I had said no?" "Then I would have walked away," he said sincerely. "I never wanted to force you. I only wanted to know your heart." Lena's knees weakened. She sank into the armchair, her mind reeling. Then he said something that made her look up. "Do you remember an old man at your cashier counter 3 years ago?" She frowned. "The one whose wallet was stolen?" Zion nodded slowly. "That was my grandfather." Lena's eyes widened. "You helped him. You paid for his groceries, gave him tea, and sat with him in the cold. You didn't even know his name. He told me you were the kindest soul he'd ever met." Lena sat still, stunned. "He passed away a year ago," Zion said quietly. "His last wish was for me to find you." She couldn't breathe. Her chest was tight, her mind spinning. The man she had married was not who she thought. And now, she didn't know what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Or something else? The room felt colder now, not because of the air, but because of the silence, the kind that follows after a storm, but before the wreckage is understood. Lena sat motionless, staring at the man who was supposed to be her husband. He looked nothing like the person she had mentally prepared herself to live with. And yet, the voice, the gentleness, the way he listened, those were familiar, too familiar. Zion stood a few feet away, still wrapped in the towel, his expression a mixture of regret and hope. "I never meant to hurt you," he said softly. "I only wanted to know if you were truly the woman my grandfather believed you were." Lena's eyes glistened. "You could have just talked to me." "I know," he replied. "But would you have believed me then? A rich man, out of nowhere, asking to marry you." She looked down. Her fingers dug into the fabric of her dress. "No," she admitted. "I wouldn't have." The confession hung between them like a fragile thread. Zion took a slow step forward. "I know I lied about who I was, but everything else was real. The respect I showed your parents, the way I listened to you, the way I watched you carry the weight of your family with pride, that was all me, not the disguise." Lena's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The man before her was young, wealthy, and kind, but also deceptive, strategic and unpredictable. And yet he hadn't touched her without permission. He hadn't crossed the line. Even now, he kept a respectful distance. She stood up, her voice barely holding steady. "You could have told me the truth after the wedding, after the first night. But you waited." "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of losing your trust. Scared you'd walk away." "You should have been," she said firmly. He nodded, not defending himself. Lena walked to the large mirror. She looked at her reflection, at the woman wearing a white dress she hadn't chosen out of love but duty. "What do you want from me now?" she asked, turning around. Zion paused. Then he said the words she didn't expect. "Nothing." She blinked. "I won't force you to stay," he said. "If you want to leave, I'll drive you back myself. I'll still take care of your family. Your father's surgery will be paid for. Your brother will have a job. I'll honor every promise I made." Lena's chest tightened. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you've already proven who you are," he replied. "You don't owe me anything." Her legs felt weak. She sat back down, tears silently tracing her cheeks. "I don't know if I love you," she said honestly, "but I know I trusted you even when I didn't understand why. And right now, I don't know what to believe." Zion's voice was soft. "Then give yourself time. I'll wait." He walked out of the room slowly, leaving her alone with her thoughts, her pain, and a heart that didn't know whether to break or begin again. The following days were quiet. Zion kept his distance. He moved gently around the house, never crossing her path unless necessary. He made sure she had everything she needed: food, space, privacy, but never once asked for more than her presence. Lena stayed mostly in her room. She wandered sometimes, exploring the mansion. Every room was filled with silent beauty, expensive furniture, polished tiles, sunlight streaming through golden drapes, but to her it all felt empty, like walking through a dream that didn't belong to her. One morning, she stood on the balcony overlooking the main gate. Two servants were talking below in hushed voices. "She was tricked," one whispered. "She married him thinking he was old," the other said. "Now he's young and rich. Maybe it was her plan all along." Lena stepped back slowly. Their words pierced deeper than she expected. Everywhere she had gone in life, judgment followed. In her village, it was because she was poor. In school, it was because her shoes were torn. Now, it was because she had married a man who tested her. And yet, through it all, she had never used anyone. She walked back into her room and sat on the bed, staring at the floor. Was she wrong to stay? Was she weak for not walking away? Or was she human? That evening, Zayn knocked once on her door. Yes, she called. He opened it just enough to be heard. There's something I'd like to show you. Only if you're ready. Lena hesitated, then slowly stood up and followed him. He led her outside, into the garden behind the mansion. Under the moonlight, it looked magical. Flowers in bloom, soft lights woven through trees, and a stone bench under a tall oak. She sat. Zayn didn't sit beside her. He stood nearby, hands in his pockets. I wanted you to see this, he said, because this is where my mother used to sit. When my father died, she came here every night to pray, to cry, to breathe. She always said, when the world gets too loud, come here and let the trees speak. Lena glanced at him, surprised by his vulnerability. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he continued, but I hope you'll believe that I never saw you as a prize to win or a test to pass. I saw you as a woman who deserved truth, even if I gave it to you too late. Silence followed. Lena took a deep breath. You say I can leave, but what happens when I go back? To people who say I married for money. To a world that never forgets your past. Zayn's voice was steady. Then stay. Not for them, not even for me. Stay because you believe there might be something here worth staying for. She looked away, unsure. The pain hadn't disappeared, but somewhere inside her, the idea of staying no longer felt like surrender. It felt like a door, and for the first time, she considered stepping through it. 2 weeks later, Lena stood at the gate of her childhood home, not in a wedding dress, not as a daughter of struggle, but as someone who had seen life from two sides, the ache of sacrifice and the weight of unexpected love. The village hadn't changed much. The dust still clung to the corners of the road. The same old neem tree swayed gently. Children still ran barefoot, chasing worn-out kites. But the way people looked at Lena, that had changed. They stared as she walked by, some with respect, others with narrowed eyes. Whispers followed her like shadows. There she is, the girl who married the rich man. She was smart. She knew what she was doing. She trapped him, didn't she? Lena kept walking, her chin high. She didn't come to explain herself. She came for one reason only. Her father's surgery. At the door, her mother cried and hugged her so tight that Lena thought she'd never breathe again. My baby, Mina sobbed. You came back. I told you I would, Lena whispered into her shoulder. Baba Kadir sat inside, thinner than she remembered, but smiling for the first time in months. Harry stood near the window, his eyes holding something new, pride. Later that evening, Lena handed her mother a folded envelope. Inside was the full payment for her father's treatment. Where did you get this? Mina asked, voice trembling. Lena hesitated, then smiled faintly. From someone who didn't ask anything in return. Her mother's eyes searched her face. And are you happy? Lena looked out the window, where the moon hung low and full above the village rooftops. I don't know yet, she answered truthfully. But I'm no longer afraid to find out. Her parents said nothing, just sat quietly with her, drinking tea, the silence warm for the first time in years. The next day, she visited the old shop where she had once worked as a cashier. The owner's daughter greeted her with awe, unable to believe Lena had returned. I thought you'd never come back, she said. You left and everything changed. Lena smiled. Maybe, but not everything needs to stay changed. That evening, she sat under the neem tree with Haris. He looked at her sideways. So, what's next? I'm going back, she said softly. But this time, for myself. Do you love him? Harris asked. Lena didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for a handful of dust and let it fall slowly through her fingers. I don't know if I love him yet, she said, but I know he saw me when no one else did, and maybe that's a good place to start. Harris nodded. For the first time in years, his eyes weren't filled with anger or defeat, only hope. That night, Lena looked at the stars one last time before leaving. She whispered a silent prayer for every girl still waiting for her own light in the dark. And then she stepped back into the car that would take her to the city, to her future, to the man who had lied to her, but also the man who had believed in her. The city lights shimmered like stars trapped on earth. As the car pulled into the mansion's driveway, Lena felt her heart thudding, not in fear this time, but with something softer, something she couldn't name yet. She stepped out slowly. A servant opened the door, bowing slightly. Everything looked the same. The tall white pillars, the marble floors, the silence that once felt like a trap. But tonight, it felt different. Zayn wasn't waiting at the entrance. The house was quiet, almost still. She walked through the hallway, her steps echoing, until she reached the garden at the back. He was there, sitting alone on the stone bench beneath the oak tree, where he had once told her about his mother. His eyes were closed, his head tilted back, as if listening to the wind. She stood a few feet away, watching. He hadn't changed, not his posture, not his calm, not his distance. He hadn't tried to control her. He hadn't called, begged, or sent anyone to fetch her. He had waited, quietly, patiently, respectfully. I'm back, she said softly. Zayn opened his eyes slowly, turning toward her. You didn't have to come, he replied. I know, she said, taking a step closer, but I wanted to. He looked at her for a long time, as if searching her face for hesitation, for pain. You're not obligated to stay, he said again. I know that too, she nodded. And I'm not here because of duty or debt. I'm here because, despite everything, you treated me with dignity, even when you didn't have to, even when you tested me. She took another step forward. You gave me a choice, and I've decided to make one. Zayn stood now. The night breeze rustled the leaves above them. I don't love easily, she admitted, but I've seen love twisted, and I've seen it honest. And I think, if it's going to begin somewhere, it should begin where there's truth. He didn't speak. His eyes glistened. I don't know what the future holds, Lena whispered, but I want to try, with you. Zayn stepped forward slowly. You're sure? She smiled gently, the first true smile since the wedding. Yes, but I want one promise. Anything, he said, voice low. No more masks. No more tests. Just us. Real. Honest. Zayn reached for her hand, his touch warm, steady. You have my word. And in that moment, Lena no longer felt like the poor village girl. No longer the girl who had to prove her worth to be loved. She was a woman who had chosen. And she had been chosen, not for beauty, not for wealth, not for what she could offer, but for who she truly was. They stood there, beneath the moon, hands intertwined. Two strangers no longer, just two souls learning to begin again.